My name is Mabel Hawthorne. I am 78 years old, and I've spent most of my life building a family and a home that would outlast me. I live in a modest, cream-colored house on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, the mountains framing my backyard like silent guardians. I raised my only daughter, Clara, on my own after her father, Robert, passed away when she was 8. I worked long hours as a librarian and even longer nights sewing clothes, baking pies, and filling our small home with a warmth of love that neither wealth nor privilege could buy. I am not rich, but I am stubborn, and I have always believed in the quiet power of loyalty and family. This morning, as the sun poured through the lace curtains, my phone rang. Clara's name flashed across the screen. I picked it up, expecting her usual cheerful chatter. Instead, her voice trembled. "Mom, I need to tell you something about the wedding." My heart sank. At 78, I never thought I'd be dealing with a wedding. But Clara had always dreamed of a grand celebration with the family she loved so dearly. I had promised her nothing would stop it, not even my own arthritis, my thinning hair, or the creeping shadow of age. "What is it, darling?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a long pause, filled with the kind of hesitation that only fear can carry. Finally, she said, almost in a whisper, I think we should make it smaller. Just my fiancé's family. They want it simple, and I think it'll be easier that way. Yes, we'll handle everything. Could you just send the check, Mom? Her words were soft, polite, but beneath them, I could feel the weight of erasure. I had already reserved the Willow Creek Manor, a beautiful historic estate with sprawling gardens, a koi pond, and marble staircases. I had written a check for $15,000 as a deposit, believing it would unite our families, not divide them. I sank into the old wooden chair by the kitchen table, the one that had been my mother's, and I looked out at the backyard. The oak trees swayed in the morning breeze, their leaves rustling like whispers of old secrets. I could almost see the wedding. Clara in a flowing white gown, smiling at Brandon, the garden bursting with lanterns, laughter echoing across the lawn. And I? Where would I fit in a celebration that no longer wanted me? The room felt smaller, colder. My heart ached, not just from the fear of being excluded, but from the realization that time had softened Clara's boundaries with me, and now she was letting someone else decide where I belonged in her life. I had always been the anchor, the quiet strength, the one who ensured that family came first. And now, in that single phone call, it felt as if I were being erased. I pressed the check back into the drawer. I wouldn't send it. Not yet. Not while I understood the full picture. I had lived through wars, recessions, heartbreak, and the loss of my beloved Robert. I had survived loneliness, disappointment, and betrayal. And I knew deep down that surrender was not in my nature. A knock on the door startled me. It was early, too early for neighbors to be visiting. My heart raced as I opened it. Standing there, framed by the sunlight, was Brandon's mother. She smiled warmly, her hand extended. "Mabel, I hope I'm not intruding," she said. But her eyes flicked past me to the kitchen, to the check on the counter. "We just thought we could discuss the wedding arrangements." My chest tightened. The smile felt rehearsed, the words carefully chosen. And in that moment, the weight of everything, the decades of love, loss, and devotion, settled on my shoulders like a boulder. I stepped aside, letting her in, but my mind raced with questions, schemes, and a quiet determination that had carried me through life's fiercest storms. And that's when I realized, the wedding was no longer just about Clara. It had become a battlefield, and I intended to win. The clock ticked, the sunlight shifted, and as Brandon's mother crossed the threshold, I felt the spark of a plan ignite. "Shall we sit?" she said, her eyes scanning the table as if evaluating whether I was worthy of the discussion. I nodded politely, keeping my hands folded, remembering the countless hours I had taught Clara to set a proper table, to speak with dignity, to carry herself with grace. Grace, I realized, could be a weapon if wielded properly. Evelyn began discussing colors, table arrangements, catering, and floral designs. But her words were like background noise, a soft hum against the pounding of my own thoughts. I wasn't thinking about flowers. I was thinking about Clara, the little girl who had begged me for extra bedtime stories, who had cried over broken toys, and who had always sought my approval. And now, she was allowing someone else to rewrite her story. My heart clenched with a mix of sadness and fury I hadn't felt in decades. "You understand," Evelyn said, tilting her head. "We just want to make things simpler, more refined." I remembered the first time Clara had spoken of Brandon. She was 16, cheeks flushed, eyes sparkling with excitement. I had listened, cautious but curious, as she gushed about his humor, his kindness, the way he held doors open for strangers, and how he laughed at her terrible jokes. I had approved cautiously, trusting that time would reveal character. And now, 10 years later, I realized that love was never simple, and that weddings, like life, were a test of loyalty and strength. "I see," I said finally, my voice soft, deliberate. "Then let's take it one step at a time. We will discuss your vision, yes. But any contracts, any arrangements, must remain pending until I review them." "Yes," I said firmly. "Pending. The manor is booked, yes, but the deposit and arrangements are under my name. Until everything is clear, nothing moves forward. Not flowers, not caterers, not invitations. My signature, my authority." I let Evelyn leave, her carefully measured steps echoing down my hallway, and I exhaled slowly. Outside, the late morning sun fell on my small garden, illuminating the roses I had planted the year Clara was born. Each bloom reminded me that beauty and strength often grow together, nurtured patiently, quietly, and resiliently. I picked up the check once more, holding it between my fingers. It was more than a piece of paper. It was a line in the sand, a warning, beginning. And as I set it back on the counter, I knew the first message had been sent. Mabel Hawthorne does not bend. Mabel Hawthorne does not vanish. And Mabel Hawthorne will never be ignored. The phone rang just then, shrill and insistent. Froze. On the screen, Clara's name glowed. My daughter, the child I had loved, raised, and protected, now calling me into a storm I was only beginning to navigate. Answered. "Mom, I don't know what to do," she said, her voice small, almost broken. "Brandon, he's there, everything is falling apart." I gripped the phone tighter. This was it. The moment where years of wisdom and quiet power would collide with love and loyalty. And I whispered softly, with the weight of 78 years behind me, "Then we fix it. Together." I remember the first time Clara fell in love. She was 16, and her heart had collided with a boy named Tommy at her high school science fair. I watched from the kitchen window as she laughed, her cheeks rosy and bright, hair spilling over her shoulders like sunlight. I had warned her about rushing into love, about letting her heart choose blindly, but she had insisted. That day, I realized parenting doesn't mean controlling. It means standing ready, steadfast, no matter the storms that might come. Now, 12 years later, that same steadfastness would be tested in ways I had never imagined. Clara's fiancé, Brandon Whitmore, came from a family polished by wealth and image, a family where reputation mattered more than warmth, and control was a form of love. They had visions of a small, perfect wedding, excluding the family who had nurtured Clara from infancy. Their intentions were subtle, their tactics refined, but they carried the same weight as a hammer striking stone. I sat at my kitchen table, the check in front of me like a silent witness, and I allowed myself a moment of reflection. I traced the edges of the paper, thinking about Robert, my late husband. His hands, calloused from carpentry, had built the bookshelves that lined my study, the ones Clara spent hours exploring. He had taught me about integrity, about quiet power, about the strength found in patience. I had carried those lessons alone for decades, And now they would guide me through this storm. Clara called again, this time her voice cracking under pressure. Mom, Brandon's parents are insisting we finalize everything today. I don't know what to do. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch, letting her feel the gravity of my presence even through the phone. Darling, I said slowly, deliberately, do you remember the first time you baked a pie for your school fundraiser? The crust burned, the filling spilled, and yet you kept trying until it was perfect. Life, love, weddings, they are much the same. You cannot hand over control to someone who sees family as an inconvenience. Easier. The word made my stomach twist. I had spent my life teaching Clara that easier was not always better, that loyalty and respect were worth more than convenience. Easier, I said, my voice firm, is often just a word people use when they want to erase what they cannot control. Do you want a wedding you can be proud of, or one that leaves your heart empty? I could hear her swallow on the other end. The distance between us felt like miles, though I knew she was sitting in her bright apartment, the city humming around her. I don't know, she whispered. I stood, moving to the window, letting my fingers brush against the curtain as I surveyed the garden. The roses were blooming early this year, their color rich and defiant. They reminded me that beauty could survive neglect, and that strength often rose from roots hidden deep beneath the soil. Clara, I said softly, you will not make this decision alone. We will do this together. But one thing I will not compromise is the place of family. We have loved you, raised you, and built the life that allows you to dream. That cannot be ignored. Not by anyone. Her voice trembled. Mom, I want to do the right thing, but I'm so scared of disappointing them. I shook my head gently. Darling, the only person you should fear disappointing is yourself. Everything else is secondary. The conversation ended with no resolution, but the seed had been planted. Clara's silence spoke volumes. She was beginning to see the cracks in the polished surface of Brandon's family, the subtle ways they had tried to shape her choices. And I, Mabel Hawthorne, 78, widow, mother, and keeper of decades of quiet strength, was ready to guide her through it. As I poured myself a glass of sweet tea and settled into my favorite armchair, I felt the calm before the storm. The next move was mine, and I intended to play it with patience, precision, and power. And somewhere in the quiet of that Asheville night, I knew Clara was watching, listening, learning. She would see that loyalty was not a word, it was an action. And that sometimes a mother's strength is the only thing standing between injustice and her family. The silence that followed was heavy. Then the faintest edge of surprise in her tone. Mrs. Hawthorne, I understand. Yes, I said, sipping my tea, feeling the fire in my chest. You understand perfectly. The game had begun. And this time I would not be the one erased. She looked down, twisting the edge of the mug. But there, I don't know, intimidating. Mid-morning I had called the Manor's wedding planner, a sharp woman named Lillian Graves. I spoke calmly but firmly. Lillian, I need you to freeze all arrangements. Flowers, caterers, invitations, everything. Nothing moves forward without my approval. And please update the reservation. From this point forward, it's officially a Hawthorne family event. There was a pause on the line. Mrs. Hawthorne, are you certain? Yes, I said. Absolutely certain. I hung up and turned to Clara. She was staring at me, a mixture of awe and fear in her expression. Mom, you really mean it? He nodded. We are not going to be sidelined. They tried to erase us yesterday, but this time, they will see that loyalty and family are not optional. They are non-negotiable. By noon, I had uncovered small, almost trivial errors in the planning documents. An overbooked caterer, missing floral deposits, conflicting schedules. Each discovery gave me leverage, a subtle reminder that control was not only on my side, it had always been. I mapped out every vendor, every payment, every detail as if plotting a chessboard, knowing each move would count in the coming days. Clara watched me quietly, fascination and admiration battling with her anxiety. "Mom," she whispered, "how do you stay so calm?" By evening, a message arrived on my phone. Brandon. He was upset, anxious, and clearly beginning to feel the pressure his family had not anticipated. He had tried to negotiate, to bypass me, to smooth over tensions with apologies and promises. I let him speak, listening to his confusion. His fear that Clara might blame him, that his family might see him as weak. I said nothing, simply listened, then reminded him gently. "Your family has made decisions without considering Clara or her loyalty. We will move forward only when respect for everyone involved is restored. That is not negotiable." Later that night, I walked through my garden again. The roses glowed silver in the moonlight. I could feel the first real tremors of fear ripple through the Whitmores. I had not yet made a single aggressive move, but they knew, somehow instinctively, that Mabel Hawthorne would not be ignored. The phone rang again, sharp and insistent. Answered. On the screen, Lillian Graves. "Mrs. Hawthorne. They've just called about the floral arrangements. They are furious." I smiled, soft and controlled. "Good. Let them be furious. Let them see we are here, and we are not leaving." The battle had truly begun. And I, Mabel Hawthorne, was ready. The morning air in Asheville carried a brittle chill, the kind of cold that makes the lungs sharp and alert. I, Mabel Hawthorne, 78, with hair silver as moonlight and eyes sharpened by years of vigilance, sat at my oak desk, a steaming cup of tea beside me. The Manor's vendor contracts lay spread out like a battlefield map before me. Every signature, every clause, every cancellation notice held potential leverage. Clara entered quietly, her eyes bright with determination. "Mom." I looked through the invitation list again. There are names. Relatives and friends I didn't know were being excluded intentionally. I nodded, my hand moving to smooth a line in the contracts. I thought as much. This isn't just about aesthetics or simplicity. Strategic. They want to erase us quietly, making it seem accidental, elegant, harmless. But we see it for what it is. She frowned. "Do you think they're hiding other things too?" I leaned back, letting the weight of my experience settle in the room. Always. People who try to erase family always have secrets, hidden motives. The slightest misstep can unravel their control. And we'll find it. By mid-morning, I had arranged discreet meetings with several of the vendors under the guise of clarifications. The florist admitted she had been instructed to limit the bouquets, to keep certain family members out of the photographs. The caterer confided that they had been pressured to change seating arrangements without notifying anyone. Even the photographer, a young man named Elliot, hinted at a whispered insistence from the Whitmores to capture only the right images. Clara's eyes widened as she listened. "Mom, they're really trying to erase us completely." I placed a firm hand over hers. "They underestimated the Hawthornes. They've forgotten that family loyalty isn't just tradition, it's power. And power is what we're reclaiming." Around noon, I received an unexpected text from a distant cousin, Abigail, who had connections in Asheville's local archives. She had discovered past incidents involving the Whitmores, financial manipulations, subtle disinheritances, and a scandal quietly swept under the rug. Pieces of a hidden history were emerging, whispering that control, intimidation, and exclusion were nothing new to them. I felt a thrill of quiet satisfaction. Every hidden corner I illuminated was another step toward balance, another opportunity to assert our place. "Clara," I said, "sometimes the best way to win is to understand the battlefield before the battle begins. Knowledge is the greatest weapon." By mid-afternoon, Clara had gained her courage. She called the Manor's event coordinator herself. Her voice was firm, polite, and unmistakably clear. "This is my wedding too. My family is not optional. They will be included in every way I wish them to be. No exceptions." I felt a swelling pride. The girl who had once hesitated to speak for herself was now asserting her rightful place. "Well done, darling," I whispered. "You're learning that voice without hesitation is strength." Meanwhile, subtle cracks in the Whitmore household became evident. Brandon, clearly unnerved, tried to smooth over tensions, but the atmosphere at their mansion was fraying. Whispers of discontent, the occasional raised eyebrow, and hurried explanations betrayed their unease. They had assumed fear or politeness would keep us compliant. They had not anticipated strategy, patience, or resolve. By evening, I stood in the garden, the last light of autumn brushing the roses in a fiery glow. Clara approached, her hands tucked around a warm cup of cocoa. "Mom, I think they're beginning to realize we're not backing down." I nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Good. Let them feel the weight of respect. This isn't aggression. It's accountability. We will proceed not with anger, but with precision, integrity, and clarity. That is power they cannot touch." The phone rang just as the sky deepened into dusky purple. It was Lillian Graves. "Mrs. Hawthorne, they've noticed the hold on the contracts. Brandon he's asking questions. They're concerned." I smiled softly, the fire of satisfaction warming me. "Good. Let them worry. Let them see that family and loyalty are not negotiable. Have patience. And we have truth." Clara leaned on my shoulder, her eyes shining with newfound courage. "Mom, we're really doing this. Together." "Yes, darling," I said, my voice steady, a quiet storm beneath the calm. "Together. And when this is done, they will know exactly who they tried to underestimate." As night fell over Asheville, I walked the garden once more, feeling the crisp wind carry the scent of roses and earth. The game was no longer about inclusion alone. It was about revealing truth, restoring honor, and teaching my daughter, and them, that the Hawthorns cannot be ignored. And somewhere, in the grand Whitmore mansion, tension simmered. Their polished smiles and carefully rehearsed manners could not hide the worry that now crept into their perfect plans. The storm had begun, and we, Mabel and Clara Hawthorne, were ready.
The morning sun in Asheville was pale, filtering through the amber leaves of October, but inside our small Hawthorne home, the air was electric. I, Mabel Hawthorne, 78, with silver hair tied neatly at the nape of my neck and eyes sharper than ever, sat at the kitchen table reviewing the vendor contracts once more. Each page held potential leverage. Each signature, a reminder that authority was mine and mine alone. Clara entered, her steps brisk, determination written clearly across her face. "Mom, I've been thinking," she said, clutching her tablet. "Maybe it's time we start addressing the invitations directly. If we wait, they'll assume we're complying." I nodded, my fingers tracing the edge of the legal paperwork. "Exactly, darling. Strategy requires patience, but action must be precise. Subtle moves first, showing intent but not aggression. Let them realize we are in control before they even understand the game." By mid-morning, we had begun what I called our quiet campaign. Clara contacted the caterer directly, confirming guest accommodations for our side of the family. I sent a polite but firm letter to the florist, clarifying exact arrangements and specifying seating charts. Each vendor, previously manipulated, now received clear instructions from the actual contract holder, me. Clara's confidence grew with each successful move. "Mom," she whispered, "I never thought I could actually do this. I feel strong." I smiled, pouring her a cup of tea. "Strength, Clara, isn't born in comfort. It's forged in situations that test courage, patience, and clarity. You are learning what every Hawthorne has known. Dignity cannot be demanded. It must be exercised." Meanwhile, across town, the Whitmore household was beginning to feel the strain. Brandon called mid-afternoon, voice tight with anxiety. "Mom, they're asking questions. They're noticing that things are different. Lauren, she's not happy." I didn't flinch. "Let them be concerned," I said calmly. "Concern will force clarity, and clarity will expose intent. That is what strategy looks like." By late afternoon, Clara had taken another step forward, calling the manor directly. Her voice, firm and unhesitant, carried authority. "This is my wedding as much as anyone else's. Our family is to be included fully, and no arrangements are final until our confirmation. Understand?" I watched with pride as the coordinator stammered slightly, clearly surprised at the assertion. "Yes, Ms. Hawthorne. Absolutely." "Noted," she replied. Evening fell, painting the sky with streaks of fire and purple. Clara and I stood in the garden, sipping cocoa and listening to the distant city hum. "Mom, it feels like we're really changing the game," Clara said, her eyes wide with awe. "Yes, darling," I said softly. "The game is never about force. It's about presence, awareness, and timing. They will soon understand that authority is not always who shouts the loudest. It's who holds the truth quietly and resolutely." The phone rang just as the first stars appeared in the sky. Lillian Graves, the manor planner, called again. "Mrs. Hawthorne, there's unrest. Brandon and Lauren are uneasy." Clara leaned against my shoulder, her warmth grounding me. "Mom, we're ready. Together, nothing can stop us." I looked out over our garden, the autumn leaves glowing softly in the twilight, and whispered, "No, darling, they cannot stop us. Not now. Not ever. Let them see that strength can be quiet, but unstoppable." Somewhere in their polished mansion, the Whitmores felt the first real tremors of challenge. They had tried to control, to erase, to intimidate, but they had not accounted for experience, patience, and an unbreakable will. The next morning, Asheville carried a faint fog that made the streets shimmer in silver light, but inside the Hawthorne home, clarity burned brighter than ever. I, Mabel Hawthorne, 78, felt the weight of decades behind me, yet the energy of purpose coursed through my veins. Today the game would escalate. Clara appeared at my side, tablet in hand, eyes alive with determination. "Mom," she said quietly, "I've noticed some unusual charges on the manor's invoices. Something doesn't add up. I think they're trying to override our arrangements quietly." I nodded, my fingers already moving to gather the evidence. Subtlety is their weapon, but oversight is ours. We watch closely, track every detail. The truth will show itself, and when it does, it will be undeniable. At mid-afternoon, a knock came at the door. It was Evelyn Whitmore, impeccably dressed, her smile strained. "Mrs. Hawthorne," she said, voice brittle with forced charm, "I thought we might clarify a few details regarding the manor." I gestured for her to sit, my gaze steady. "Evelyn, we appreciate the offer, but everything must go through me. I am the contract holder, and no vendor, no decision, moves without my approval." Her lips pressed tight, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Of course. I just thought a conversation might be helpful." I leaned forward, calm but unyielding. "Helpful. Only if honesty is involved. Otherwise it's interference. And we have seen far too much interference already." Evelyn shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Clara, who now sat confidently at my side. You understand, don't you? Lauren she has plans. Very particular ones." I smiled faintly. "Yes, and we understand too. But plans cannot erase family. Plans cannot rewrite contracts. Plans cannot erase decades of love and loyalty." Clara's eyes widened as I explained. "Mom, you mean everything they've been trying to control is actually under our authority?" "Exactly. I said, letting the truth sink in. They assumed intimidation and intimidation alone would work. They forgot that contracts are not just paper, they are power. The phone rang, and it was Brandon Whitmore. His voice was thin, strained with tension. "Mrs. Hawthorne, we didn't expect this. The vendors, they've confirmed your authority. We need to discuss." I raised a hand, cutting him off gently. "Brandon, there is nothing to discuss. Family will be included. That is the decision. The contracts are clear. Truth is clear. The game is not negotiation. It is accountability." Clara leaned closer, whispering, "Mom, I never realized how strong we could be." I placed a hand on hers, feeling her resolve intertwine with mine. "Strength isn't born in fear, darling. It grows in action, in clarity, in the quiet moments when others assume we are powerless. Now you see." I nodded, feeling the steady pulse of strategy and truth flowing through me. "Yes, darling. The storm has begun. And when it ends, they will know exactly who they tried to underestimate." Somewhere in their grand mansion, whispers of worry and frustration had already begun. The perfect plans, the controlled appearances, the polished exteriors, they were cracking. And at the center of it all stood the Hawthornes, resolute, informed, unyielding. Tonight the game was no longer subtle. The power had shifted, and Clara and I were ready to see it through together. The next morning, Asheville woke to a crisp, amber dawn. The kind of autumn day that made leaves glisten like tiny coins scattered across sidewalks. I, Mabel Hawthorne, 78, with my silver hair neatly pinned back, felt the calm before a storm. Today, the Whitmores' desperation would reveal itself, and Clara and I would respond with precision. Clara entered, a tablet clutched in her hand, her face lit with focus. "Mom, the manor just emailed. They're asking why we've frozen all the vendors. Lauren is furious." I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the steam carry the clarity of thought. Perfect. Anger reveals weakness. It's the first sign that their control is slipping. Now we act. By mid-morning, we began orchestrating our counter-strategy. Clara called the caterer, speaking with an authority that left no room for hesitation. "We're confirming all seating arrangements exactly as Mabel outlined. Every guest from our side is included. No exceptions." By afternoon, subtle but unmistakable signs of panic began to surface. Evelyn Whitmore sent messages dripping with faux civility but desperation. Brandon called twice in a single hour, voice tight with tension, asking for clarification on arrangements he previously assumed he controlled. Lauren, meanwhile, had begun sending terse texts to her friends, questioning their loyalty and the timing of the Hawthornes' interventions. Clara watched the unfolding scene with wide eyes. "Mom, they're actually worried. They think we're going to do something drastic." I placed a steadying hand on hers. "No, darling. Nothing drastic. Just precision. Control. They see us as opponents, but we are merely keeping the rules intact. Family isn't a favor. It's non-negotiable." I leaned back, a quiet smile tugging at my lips. "Ah." "Desperation reveals everything," I whispered. Clara's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Mom, so we can intercept it all?" "Yes," I said, tapping my pen decisively against the table. "We counter exactly where they overreach. Every move they make against us becomes an opportunity to assert our authority. Watch and learn, Clara. The subtle power of truth always wins over deceit." By evening, we had executed a series of quiet but effective moves, correcting seating arrangements, ensuring proper invitations were confirmed, and sending reminders to vendors about the signed contracts. Each action was deliberate, leaving no doubt who held control. Clara leaned against me in the garden, the crisp night air carrying the scent of fallen leaves. "Mom, we're really doing this. They can't. They can't manipulate us now. I smiled, looking at the stars above. No, darling. They can try, but rules, contracts, loyalty, they cannot be rewritten by anger or arrogance. They've shown their hand, and now we respond, not with fury, but with clarity and precision. The phone rang, and it was Brandon Whitmore again. His voice was strained, shaky with the tension of a man losing control. Mrs. Hawthorne, we need to discuss. They're upset. They think we've gone too far. I set the phone down calmly, feeling the satisfaction of strategy unfolding. Good, I whispered. Let them worry. Let them feel the weight of truth. That is power. As Clara and I walked through the garden under the soft glow of the streetlights, the tension of the past weeks began to crystallize into a clear advantage. The Whitmores' attempts to intimidate, erase, and control had backfired. Their desperation had made their plans vulnerable. And the Hawthornes, steady, patient, resolute, were now in full command. Tonight the stakes had never been higher. And as the cool wind rustled the amber leaves, I knew the game had reached its boiling point. Our next moves would determine not just the wedding, but the lasting lesson the Whitmores would carry forever. Never underestimate family, never underestimate loyalty, and never underestimate a Hawthorne. The morning sun in Asheville had a sharp clarity, almost as though it sensed the storm of confrontation that would unfold today. I, Mabel Hawthorne, 78, felt no fear, only resolve. Clara, now fully confident, mirrored my determination. Together, we moved through the house with quiet precision, like generals surveying the battlefield before the final charge. Clara whispered, eyes gleaming, "Mom, they're overextending. We can corner them legally and publicly now." He nodded. "Exactly. Calm, deliberate, undeniable. It's time the world sees that respect and authority cannot be purchased. They are earned and exercised." Brandon attempted a conciliatory tone, his words wavering. "Mom, Mrs. Hawthorne, maybe we can compromise. Lauren, we didn't expect this level of resistance." I leaned forward, voice steady and commanding. "Brandon, there is no compromise needed. Respect and family are not negotiable. The contracts are clear. The vendors are clear. The rules have been set. Your anger, your frustration, your desire to control, they cannot change what is legally and morally right." Lauren's lips pressed tight, her eyes flashing with irritation, but even she could see the inevitability. Evelyn's polite mask slipped, revealing the panic beneath. The manor coordinator, once neutral, now glanced at us with relief, clearly aligned with the rightful authority. Clara stood beside me, her voice clear and unwavering. "Everyone will be included. Our family is not optional. This is our day as much as anyone's. We won't be erased." By evening, the wedding plans were restored fully in our hands. Every guest confirmed, every detail aligned with both families present. The Whitmores, defeated but still poised outwardly, accepted the inevitable. The lesson had been delivered quietly, decisively, and without public humiliation, though the sting of defeat was palpable. As Clara and I walked through the autumn garden that night, amber leaves crunching softly beneath our feet, I felt a profound sense of peace. "Mom," Clara whispered, "we did it. We didn't lose ourselves, and we didn't lose family." I smiled, the cool night air brushing my face. "No, darling. We stood for what matters. Loyalty, dignity, family, they are not negotiable. And in standing firm, we've not just protected a wedding, but the values that define us. Strength isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet, deliberate, and resolute." The stars above seemed to twinkle in agreement. Somewhere in the Whitmore mansion, lessons had been learned the hard way. But in the Hawthorne home, legacy and love had triumphed. The game had ended, but the story, our story, would be remembered not for conflict, but for the unwavering power of family. As we sipped warm cocoa beneath the soft glow of lanterns in our garden, I whispered softly to Clara, "Remember, darling, life will test you in ways you cannot imagine. But the measure of a person isn't in what they can take from you. It's in what you protect, quietly, with unwavering strength." And with that, the night settled, calm and certain. The storm had passed, and in its wake, the Hawthorne stood unshaken, victorious, and at peace.